Number 5. Jennifer Grey. Everyone's probably familiar with the 1987 film Dirty Dancing, which is a drama-filled dance film with some romantic overtones, or something like that. For a movie that was produced in 1987, it isn't half as bad as many people would agree. And for the low-budget film it turned out to be a surprise hit. The film stars Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey, who plays the part of Baby, who hooks up with some kind of 80s bad boy who really isn't a bad guy. He just looks the part. Before this, she starred in many films such as Reckless, The Cotton Club, Red Dawn, American Flyers, and the scriptwriter's favorite, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The point of bringing all this up is that it was the beginning of a nice film career for Jennifer. It's been 30 years since that film catapulted her to fame, and things were going nicely, but Jennifer added herself to the Where Are They Now list, not because she did something bad or suddenly lost her talent, but because she decided to get a nose job. She blames this for adversely affecting her career, and she's probably right. It's not that the nose job was bad or anything, the problem was that it changed her entire look. She even said herself that she went into the operating room a celebrity and then came out anonymous. No one recognized her after this, and she called it the nose job from hell. Most of her jobs from that moment on were small parts in movies and TV shows that no one had heard of unless they were following them closely. She did have a guest appearance on Friends back in 1995 and House in 2010, and then in a couple of TV movies. However, her most recent and successful role was playing herself on Dancing with the Stars, which she won. Jennifer still goes to dancing lessons to practice once a week. She said that after Patrick Swayze passed away in 2009, that she appreciates life a little more and is happy and grateful to be alive. Number 4. Michael Richards. Most people might instantly recognize Michael Richards as the actor who played Cosmo Kramer on the hit NBC TV series Seinfeld, which is one of the most successful sitcoms of all time. It was a show that was cemented in television, and the characters were so ingrained into their roles on the show that after the show ended, all of the actors, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Jason Alexander, Seinfeld, and of course Michael Richards, were a bit typecast. There was a thing called the Seinfeld curse, and it seemed that none of them would find the same success that they all had together on Seinfeld. However, Louis-Dreyfus and Alexander did find some small successes here and there, but Michael Richards did not. There was The Michael Richards Show, which premiered just 2 years after Seinfeld ended, proving that NBC still wanted audiences watching whatever Michael Richards was gonna play next with his wild character. He ended up playing Vic Nardoza, who was a bumbling private investigator who gets himself into all kinds of bizarre mishaps. The scripts turned out to be decent, but Richards' performance relied heavily on physical comedy. The result was a show that could have been called Kramer P.I. because NBC wanted Richards throwing himself around and falling down like Kramer did in Seinfeld. But the reason that Michael seemed to be cursed a little more than the others was simply part of his own undoing, you could say. Basically, Richards ended up hurting himself by letting someone in an audience get the better of him, in which he launched himself into a racist tirade on stage in front of an audience. The incident happened at the Laugh Factory, where someone in the audience was heckling Richards and interrupted his performance. Actually, for someone to say that Richards lost his temper might be an understatement. He ended up exploding into a rage and made a reference to a lynching and repeatedly some word which we will not repeat several times over. It was an incredibly shocking outburst, especially coming from the goofy and nutty guy who America had fondly remembered sliding through Jerry Seinfeld's apartment door every time the show came on. From that moment on, nothing was ever the same for Michael Richards. Number 3. Shia LaBeouf. Some people might know Shia LaBeouf when he starred in the Disney show Even Stevens. In the show, he played the character Louis Stevens, who was the mischievous little brother of a perfectionist older sister. He was a kid who was preparing for stardom. He then showed up in the franchise Transformers, which seemed to propel him to stardom. Since then, his career's taken some weird twists and turns that you could say are interesting. Some of the things that he said could only make sense to him, such as, "The star is the byproduct of the machine age, a relic of modernist ideals, it's outmoded." He's known for making some strange choices in work, as some performance art projects, cryptic interviews, and apparently a lot of time spent without bathing. Well, we're not really sure about that last one, but you heard some rumors. But he's done some other questionable things. In 2009, Shia was charged with criminal trespassing following his 21st birthday. He was on Late Night with David Letterman and said that he had just been trying to buy some cigarettes at 4 o'clock in the morning. The funny thing is, he ended up making multiple late-night visits to the Walgreens, and each one of them involved a costume change. In 2013, Shia released a short film online, but viewers soon discovered that the film is a plagiarized enactment of a short story written by an author named Daniel Clowes, who wasn't credited. The incident kicks off Shia's weird and notable phase of borrowing quotes, lines, and works from other artists. He cited the phase as transformational in terms of introducing himself to a future in performance art. He was quoted as saying, "The idea of the star could become a prime site for the formulation of new stances whose honesty might advance a more satisfying kind of effect." He then apologized to the author on Twitter, but the quotes were all borrowed and unattributed as well. In 2014, he wore a paper bag over his head as he walked the red carpet at the Cannes Film Festival. On the front of the bag, he had written, "I am not famous anymore." That same month, during a press conference, he recited some line from a Manchester United football player before storming out of the conference. That same month, he launched the #IamSorry project, in which he wore the same paper bag over his head and visitors were allowed to use props to interact with him. The whole thing ended when a woman tried being naughty with the star. And all this is just the tip of the iceberg. However, Shia looks to have hurt himself, and it will be a miracle if he can make a comeback. Number 2. Thomas Gibson. If you watch CBS's television series Criminal Minds, then you probably know who Thomas Gibson is. Gibson's character of Aaron Hotchner was loved by many people. The star had it made on the show, and for 11 years, the drama continued to rock the ratings on CBS. But behind the scenes, the actor seemed to have some kind of an anger management problem. But he lost his long-standing gig after he lost his temper and ended up kicking a producer named Virgil Williams while filming on set. But this wasn't the only time things started to go bad for the actor. He is also known to have had violent outbursts with the Criminal Minds assistant director in 2010. After this happened, the studio sent him to anger management classes. Many people said that he was known to have a volatile presence on the set. It's said that the actor was frequently verbally abusive to the fellow cast and crew members. One of those crew members, who had knowledge of the 2010 incident in which he shoved the assistant director, said many of the other staff members were disheartened that he wasn't let go at the time. And the trouble didn't stop. In 2013, Gibson was arrested in Los Angeles on suspicion of drunk driving. Gibson drove his car through a barricade which had been cordoned off for a marathon. He got lucky and pleaded no contest to the alcohol-related reckless driving and received probation and had to attend alcohol education classes. It seems that Criminal Minds has gone through plenty of star turnover its 11-year run. Mandy Patinkin left the show after the second season, citing that he couldn't stomach the violent nature of the procedural about FBI criminal profilers. Joe Montana ended up being Gibson's co-star for the 2007 and 8 season. And another cast member, Shamar Moore, quit after season 11. Makes you wonder how many people actually quit because of Gibson's temper. Gibson did say that he loves Criminal Minds and put his heart and soul into it for the last 12 years and had hoped to see the show through to the end. Of course, that won't be possible now. It certainly is a terrible way for such a nice show to end, and it surely will never be the same without one of its best main characters. Number 1. Jerry Lee Lewis. Everyone probably knows who Jerry Lee Lewis was. If not, we could sum him up as the long, blonde-haired American rock and roll singer who had his own unique style of playing the piano that really blew everyone's mind. To that first generation of rock fans, this guy was the real deal. Jerry Lee Lewis was also known as The Killer and had 2 classic worldwide hits, Whole Lotta Shakin' Going On, and of course, Great Balls of Fire. He was on his way to London, and many people were excited to see the wild man of the Louisiana swamps. When Jerry Lee landed at Heathrow Airport in the UK, there were a few reporters, and one of them was Paul Tanfield, who met the star at the airport. The reporter noticed that there was a young girl in The Killer's party and asked who she might be. The girl replied, "I'm Mira, Jerry's wife." Mr. Tanfield was astonished, to say the least, and asked Jerry, "And how old is Mira?" In which he replied that she was 15 years old. However, this wasn't the truth, and despite Lewis's assertions that she was a grown woman, she wasn't, and was below the age of consent. The headlines in Britain weren't good for the star's first day in the country, but it seemed that things were about to get much worse. It was quickly discovered that Lewis had been lying about Mira's age, and that when Lewis was 22 at the time of the wedding, the girl was only 13. But that's not all. The girl was actually the singer's first cousin once removed, and just when you thought it couldn't get any worse for the singer, it was also discovered that he was bigamously married to her as he hadn't divorced his first wife yet. The story goes on about how his managers tried to explain that it wasn't unusual for girls of the age 13 to marry in Mississippi, but this didn't work, and he was eventually forced to leave London after just 3 shows. When he arrived home, some radio stations refused to play his music because of what they had heard. This ended up being the end to what could have been an amazing rock and roll career. Hope you enjoyed the video, Top 5ers. If you haven't already, check out our other channel, Americano, to enjoy even more amazing list videos. There'll be a link in the description, so check it out, as well as our other cool stuff